I think today's story made me scared of the dark. Like, you might want to keep the lights on for this one, or like, at least plug in a nightlight. Anyways, while we're reading today's story, I'm going to be working on my underground village underneath my base. Let's go ahead and get started. Today's story's from r/nosleep from user Saturdead. It's titled 3 Days in the Dark. When I was 8 years old, my brother Elliot went missing. He was just 13 years old, but older siblings have this aspirational quality to them. He just didn't come home one day. They looked for days, but couldn't find any trace of him. I was too young to understand what was going on, so I had to sit in my room and play with my Legos, hoping there'd be a knock on the door telling me things would be okay. There never was that kind of knock. They didn't find him. As days turned to weeks, the search party stopped. But even after everyone went home, I was still out looking for him. I'd take the long road home from school. I'd go down paths I hadn't checked. I had a crumbled up map in my pocket with circles around places that I knew he liked, and I was hellbent on checking all of them. People don't just disappear. It doesn't work like that. But after a while, there were no places left to check, no circles left to draw, and Elliot was still gone. Last thing he said to me was, "Later, Gator." I don't think you ever truly come to terms with something like that. Once you've run into an impossible question, you look for answers in everything. I got really into puzzles and brain teasers. Not because it was fun, but because leaving unsolved mysteries could give me this immense sense of dread. I was a great student, and one of the top contenders in the debate club. Again, not because I enjoyed it, but because I hated not knowing. When I got a little older, I started volunteering for search and rescue parties. I'd make myself known with local law enforcement and inform them that I'd gladly volunteer. I figured if I couldn't find Elliot, perhaps finding someone else's missing sister or brother was the second best thing. At the very least, it could help me sleep at night. I know there's a lot of people saying, get over it, but you can only get over so much. I'm in my early 30s now. You can forget their face and the hopes you had growing up, but you can't forget the impact they had on you. You can't forget your own lived experience and the damage those years of uncertainty have left. Even if I never were to hear the name Elliot again, I can never forget the feeling of having the trajectory of my life take a sudden turn left. I'd like to talk about a search party I signed up for a couple years back. At the time, I'd been part of dozens of organized searches. I knew some of the people involved, and I was familiar with the gear. I got there early, taking some time off work. I put on the high visibility vest, the gloves, and the backpack. Radio, water, flashlight, a couple of chocolate bars, a first aid kit, and a waterproof bag. Now, I'd never found someone on a search like that, but that didn't mean I never would. You must believe in the best case scenario. We weren't handed a GPS, which surprised me. Turns out we were going underground, so we were handed these filtration masks to protect us from harmful dust and dead air. The missing person was a 17-year-old urban explorer. I live in a city with a metro system, and he'd been exploring an abandoned station on the outskirts of town. The family had been notified of a social media post pointing at the approximate location, but the details were sketchy. To help with the search, power had been restored to this part of the tunnels. Most of the emergency lights were meant to last for years, so there shouldn't be too much of a problem getting around. We were assigned into sections and teams where we were instructed to only follow lit-up corridors and hallways. However, as parts of the station had been abandoned mid-construction, there would be dark sections that were unfinished. If we found such an area, we were ordered to call it in and ask for further instructions. And with that, we were off. I was a bit miffed about not getting to see the abandoned station platform. That thing was supposed to be huge. Instead, I was assigned to one of the maintenance tunnels. It was originally meant to house heating pipes, but the pipes were never added. Instead, there were these lines across the wall and the occasional holes in the ceiling. You could tell they must have been surprised about the project shutting down. I found a whole toolbox abandoned by a half-mounted door. There were some personal items still in it. I was in a team of 4 people. We went down the hall slowly and methodically, calling out to the missing person as we went. We stuck to our side of the search and kept in radio contact with the organizer. It was hard to see what all the spaces were supposed to be, as we'd occasionally come across entire rooms with little to nothing in them. It made it hard to explain what we'd checked, as we couldn't accurately describe what was what. Was this supposed to be a control room or some kind of plumbing junction? Where on the map exactly was this supposed to be? We came to an unusually long corridor that split off in 3 directions. While staying within earshot, we decided to split up. I got all the way to the end of the hallway, where I stopped by a heavy door. The thing was almost solid black, and as heavy as cast iron. I got the impression that it was some kind of security door, maybe leading to an underground bomb shelter. I called out to the others in my team, but didn't get a response. I called it in on the radio as I wrestled with the door. It was pitch black inside. The lights were out. Sidebar, guys. Why do people split up? Like, when you split up, something's just obviously going to go wrong. I'm looking at a dark room at the end of the hallway. C, I think? The one on the right. Second right, past the boilers. Just stay within radio contact and leave the door open, the operator responded. Don't go so far you can't see the light. Got it. I entered the room. The room was a little smaller than the hallway, tickling the top of my head when I stood upright. If I balanced on my toes, I could feel the strap from the mask touch the ceiling. I tried to figure out what the space was meant for, but I couldn't make sense of it. There was only one entry point, and there were no holes in the wall for cable management or ventilation. This was completely isolated. I tapped the radio again, swaying my flashlight back and forth. There's a corridor going deeper, I said. Is someone watching my back? Yeah, there's someone right outside, the operator assured me. You go on ahead. I took a couple of steps further, shining my flashlight down the hall. The light couldn't reach the end of it. It was such a long tunnel that it triggered my sense of vertigo. Like, for a split second, it was sucking me in. I had this uncomfortable thought that maybe this was the feeling of going missing. Facing this endless darkness you can't come back from. Maybe Elliot had thought the same thing once. I didn't like it. I was only a couple of feet from the door, but I decided I wouldn't take any chances. I turned to leave. And as I did, the door swung shut. At first, I didn't register what had happened. A door closing isn't a big thing. It might be misaligned, or maybe there could have been a breeze. This wasn't the case here. The door was solid metal. It wouldn't accidentally close on its own. I grabbed the handle and twisted and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. I couldn't even push it down. I'm stuck, I radioed in. The door closed. I can't get it open. Sorry about that. It happens, the operator sighed. Some of the hinges on these things are rusted shut. Stay by the door. Someone will get you out. Keep your flashlight on. I stayed by the door for at least 20 minutes, knocking on it occasionally just to see if anyone would knock back. They didn't. After a while, my flashlight flickered. It was far too soon for the batteries to die. Okay, I'm going dark here, I said. Someone needs to get me out now. They're having trouble finding your door, the operator responded. Far end of the right side hall, section C, past the boiler. That's what you said? That's right. There's no door here. There's an open door frame in something that looks like a closet, but no door. That's impossible. Look, you might have the wrong order. If you went past the boilers, you could be in section C or D. There are parallel corridors. In that case, you can just follow the right-hand wall until you get to the other side. There's another search party already there. Right-hand wall, other corridor. Got it. I followed their instructions, grasping the dying flashlight. As I got to the seemingly endless tunnel, the light finally gave out. It was pitch black. I could close my eyes and nothing would change. Being in that kind of darkness is so disorienting. You start to imagine how easy it is to get turned around, to the point where you're wondering if you really are turned around. But I kept my hand on the wall and stuck to the right. Is it far? I asked. I can't hear them. It's a bit of a walk. There should be some functioning pipes running overhead about halfway through, so let me know as soon as you hear running water. I couldn't hear anything but my own breathing reverberating down the hall, but if there was running water down there, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I kept my hand on the smooth concrete wall and continued a step at a time. You have to go slow, as even the slightest shift in elevation can send you crashing face first into the ground. When you're exposed to that kind of prolonged darkness, your head kind of fills in the blanks. You start to imagine what the space around you looks like. It plays tricks on you. For example, I started thinking I was running my hand across wallpaper instead of concrete. It was smooth enough that, while walking, you might trick yourself. But if you're just using your fingertips to see the world, you can imagine yourself in all kinds of places. My childhood home had a rough, paper-textured wallpaper. It didn't take a huge leap of imagination to pretend I was back there, sneaking up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I ended up taking my gloves off just to get a better idea of what I was touching. I got to a fork in the road and still hadn't heard any running water. I pulled up the radio and called it in. "There's a split here," I said. "Should I stay right or go straight ahead?" "A split?" the operator called back. "There shouldn't be a split. Are you sure?" "Yeah, there's a split." "Straight ahead or another right?" "Wait," the voice mumbled back. Wait. Don't tell me. Is the ceiling really low?" "Yes." "Why didn't you say so? Oh man, this changes things." I could hear them talking to someone in the background, forgetting to take their hand off the button. Then they returned to me. This is gonna get complicated. Turns out there were 3 other rooms with the same description as mine, and neither of them were in sections I described. I must have veered far off course. I had to walk around to gather data points to identify which of the rooms I was in, but it proved more difficult than they'd imagined. For example, one of the corridors was supposed to lead to a junction, and another would lead to a ceiling grate. However, the room at the end of the corridor was incomplete, meaning we couldn't tell what it was supposed to be. I had to go deeper to figure out where I was. I would occasionally run into ladders, but they led nowhere. There were supposed to be entrances from the street, but these had long since been filled and paved. I still had to climb each one just to make sure they hadn't missed one. The mask on my face felt more and more oppressive, like my body was packed into a box. Despite being able to move my arms around, I could feel this claustrophobic stone building in my chest, hammering a countertune to my increasing heartbeat. If I listened to it too much, I couldn't breathe. I pushed myself down another corridor, only to stop at a dead end. There was a round hole in the wall, just big enough for someone my size. That's good, the operator assured me. That means there's space for heating. If my calculations are correct, that means you're in one of these 2 hallways. I need you to go inside." "No way." "It's gonna tilt downward for about 5 feet and either go straight ahead or upward. If it goes upward, you can go straight to the top. I can have someone meet you right then and there. If it goes forward, you have to go ahead, then take a left, and then forward again. That'd put you in the same corridor as me. Either way, you have to push through." I put one knee up and traced the edges of the hole. It was too small for me to crawl on all 4s. I had to put my torso in and drag myself forward with the palm of my hands. The concrete was so smooth I couldn't get a grip with my fingers, gloves or no gloves. My gear kept getting snagged on the edges. I stopped to have a drink of water and splashed a little on my face, psyching myself up. 5 feet, then up or forward. That was it. I crawled in, inches at a time. I had to stay calm. If I tried to take a deep breath, I could feel my gear pushing against the walls. It didn't hurt, but it was this constant reminder of how isolated I was. My heart was beating through my ears, with nothing to distract from it. There wasn't the slightest hint of an echo. I felt the tunnel tilt slightly downward. Not much, but enough that pushing myself back up would be impossible. If I went ahead, I wouldn't be getting back up. Not unless I got space to turn around. "You sure it's just a couple feet?" I asked. "You absolutely sure?" "There are only 2 rooms with that kind of vent. No matter which one you're in or which direction you're coming from, you'll be out shortly. I swallowed. I could feel the sweat stinging my eyes. I wanted to throw my mask away, like that was the thing keeping me back, but I had to stay rational. I pushed myself forward and slid downward. The tunnel evened out. I felt around for an upward exit, but couldn't find one. That meant we'd isolated exactly where I was, and I had to push forward. My palms were so dusty that I could barely get a grip. I had to resort to rolling onto my back and using the rubber soles on my shoes for traction, effectively kicking myself backward. I could feel the heat of my breath gathering along the tunnel walls. Then the tunnel opened. It was so sudden that I lost my balance, haphazardly falling out head first. I did an awkward flip, landing hard on my left hip and shoulder. It wasn't a long fall, but enough for something to get sprained. I didn't want to imagine what the bruise might look like. I grabbed my radio and held onto it for dear life. "I'm out," I groaned. I made it to a room. "There's only one way forward," the operator said. "Go forward, then a left, and forward again. Once you see the light, let me know. I'm right at the other end." "That's it? That's really it? There's no other possible way." I got up, dusted myself off, and checked my gear. It was all there. Things would be okay. I followed the instructions. I went forward and took a left. At the next fork, I went straight forward, double checking with the operator every step of the way. They assured me it was just around the corner, a matter of minutes at most. At one point, he said he was banging a wrench on a pipe and that I would be able to hear it any minute now. Now I just had to go straight, until I came to a door. I was jogging, keeping my hand on the wall for balance. There were these small gaps in the wall every 10 feet or so, where there was supposed to be space for pipes. I'd walk, feel the gap, walk, feel the gap, over and over. Then I dragged my hand across someone's face. Open eyes, a nose, teeth, and hair. I stopped and turned around, my hand shaking like I'd touched a flame. "Is anyone there?" I asked. There was no answer. I debated within my own head, trying to figure out if I should head back and check again, or keep going. Maybe it was the missing person? We were still out looking for someone after all. The search hadn't been called off. I took a couple of steps back and carefully reached out with my right hand. My fingers were anticipating the touch of skin, to the point where I could imagine their heat, but as I reached further, all I felt was concrete. There was no one there. I checked thoroughly, but there was nothing. I did hear a little metallic sound though, as something stuck to my shoe. A small key. It had some kind of etched motif, like a sunflower. Maybe a blue one. I put it in my pocket with the first aid kit and kept going, making sure I hadn't been turned around. As I got to the end of the hallway, I reached for the door. "All right, this is it," I said. "I can't hear you, but I'm at the end of the hall. There's a door there. Just open it and I'll have someone come meet you." I fumbled around looking for a handle, but couldn't find one. I checked that wall 3 times, every inch of it. It was a dead end. "There's nothing here," I gasped. "There's nothing here." "Calm down. It should be on your left." "There's nothing on my left. Nothing on my right. It's a dead end. It's a goddamn..." I smacked my head with the radio and heard a click. Not as in something breaking, but something clicking into place. I turned the radio over in my hand, feeling around the back. The battery cover had been slightly off. That hit put it back in place. I opened the cover just to make sure I closed it correctly, and there were no batteries in the radio. I double and triple checked. There were no batteries. "Hello?" I asked. "Operator?" I held the radio up to my lips, clicking the receiver a couple of times. There was no sound, just the clack of plastic. "Hello?" There was no response. I collapsed against the wall, taking a moment to collect my thoughts. It didn't make sense. The battery cover had been closed even when I smacked my head with the radio. I would have heard 2 batteries tumbling to the floor. I couldn't have lost them earlier, as then the operator couldn't have talked to me in the corridor. Something wasn't adding up. I swept my hands across the floor, checking to see if the batteries were there somewhere. They weren't. But I couldn't just sit in the dark and wait either. I had to do something. Try something. This was another puzzle to figure out. There's always a solution, and sometimes you just have to make the best of the hand you're dealt. By this time, I'd drawn a mental map. All these years of figuring things out had conditioned me to collect and preserve information. It was like recounting the alphabet backwards. I just had to follow a learned sequence. I decided I was going to backtrack and try to find my way back to where I started. I made my way back to the hole in the wall and climbed inside. The upward tilt would be difficult, but I was confident that I could make it. I crawled, holding my hands out, only to feel the tunnel dip downward. I stopped dead in my tracks, my mind spinning. This was impossible. I'd been crawling down. It couldn't possibly lead further down. I crawled a little further, reaching with a full arm. This couldn't have been where I came from. Were there two separate tunnels? That was the only explanation. I pushed myself all the way back out, but couldn't find a second hole in the wall. I figured I must have been turned around somewhere, taken a wrong turn, went straight instead of right at a split, or something like that. I had to slowly and methodically map out my surroundings, one room and hallway at a time. It's easy to second guess yourself in the dark. You have nothing to rely on but your thoughts and impressions, and those are easy to misunderstand. It can be challenging even in a familiar environment. Ask anyone who's had to go to the bathroom during a power outage. I was somewhere deep underground, in an unmapped area, without light or direction. I must have wandered for hours. I mapped out 2 branching corridors, leading to 3 rooms and 4 dead ends. There were no doors, and only one hole in the wall leading to a tunnel. And yes, I checked it again. It kept going downward. No, I didn't proceed that way. I ended up in one of the smaller rooms, rolling up my high visibility vest into a pillow. I drank some water, but saved some for later, and chowed down on a chocolate bar. The others were probably looking for me by now. I tried not to think about the radio. That was a piece of the puzzle that made my stomach roll. No matter how I twisted and turned that thought, I couldn't get it to make sense. If it was empty all along, I was the problem. If it wasn't empty until that last click of the battery cover, there had to be batteries on the floor. I couldn't find any, but that didn't mean there weren't any. And yet, I didn't have a clear answer. I ended up spending the night down there. It's difficult to sleep in that kind of darkness. After a while, you don't know if your eyes are opened or closed. You don't know if you're sleeping or not. The barrier between imagination and reality is paper thin, and you start thinking whatever you dream about is really there. There could be someone in the room, just inches away, and I would have no way to know for sure. It was the first time in many years that I thought about Elliot. Not just the reality of him going missing, but him as a person. I imagined what he might have felt like during those last few hours, or days. Had there been someone with him, or had he faded away in the dark? He and I had always been very similar. Chances are we would think the same thing in our final moments, and if this was one of my final moments, I was scared. He would be too. I tried not to think about it. There was no way to know for sure, and imagining the worst wasn't helping anyone. He could have run away, eloped with a pretty girl, and lived in some hippie co-op. He might resurface in 20 years. You can't tell the future. But somehow, a part of me felt like it knew. It knew he'd gone someplace dark, where he could never come back. Maybe it was the next day, or just a couple of hours, but at some point, I got up. I decided I was going to check the tunnel again. There must have been some kind of misunderstanding. I drank my last gulp of water and followed the map in my mind. The layout was different. There were more rooms and shorter corridors. If you took 2 lefts, there were a couple of stairs. There was a larger room with a rounded floor for draining liquid. I would go down the same hallway twice, and I could swear it was different lengths. I would count my steps and end up with the same result, but one would take a minute to pass, and the next it would take 2. I felt like I was losing my mind. Every time I tried to make clear sense of that place, it seemed to shift and change. Like it wasn't finished, in more ways than one. Like an approximation of space and dimension. After my third pass around the same rooms, and still not making any sense of it, I took a break. I was leaning back, tapping the back of my head against the wall as if trying to dislodge a good idea. Instead, I picked up the radio, clicking the receiver and turning the dials. Now it was just a plastic brick, no better than a paperweight. I checked the back, unlatching the battery cover. Still empty. Then, a noise. "There's a way out, you know." The crackling voice came from the radio, but there was something about it that resonated within me, like the reverb was tickling the back of my mind. "You're not real," I mumbled. "I'm hallucinating." "Are you sure?" "It's like a sensory deprivation tank. If your senses stop getting input, your brain starts firing random signals just to keep them occupied. Otherwise, it sort of atrophies." "So I'm just a random brain signal?" "I would suppose so." "Interesting," the voice continued. "So that means whatever I say is an expression of yourself." "No, it's just random noise. You might as well be a cat's meow or a leaf in the wind." "But what do I sound like to you? Try to categorize me. Make sense of me. Who am I?" Little sidebar, I don't know how this guy is staying so calm. Like, he's talking to a voice that is either a ghost or he's hallucinating, and he's like, "You're not real, shut up." Okay, let's continue. The voice was a man. Age was difficult to tell through a radio, but I was guessing they weren't a teenager or a senior. Adult or middle-aged, with a slight hint of an accent similar to my own. That was a curious choice. "Where's that accent from?" I asked. "Wherever you want it to be from." "Cute deflection. I wonder why I'm imagining you like that." "Maybe you're trying to express something." "Why would I care about some random person with an accent?" "Maybe I'm not a random person." I leaned the radio away, closed my eyes, and shook my head. "Don't do that," I whispered. "Don't say things like that." I wandered the dark for a bit, desperately trying to make sense of my surroundings. The number of steps on the stairs were different. The corridor turned right instead of left. The ceiling was lower, and the angle of the tilt in the floor of the big room was deeper. I thought I felt a door handle, but upon doubling back, I realized it was a clasp for a missing pipe. I talked out loud all that time, getting the occasional response from the radio. I knew it wasn't real, but it kept me from digesting random thoughts into something rancid. I had to stay focused on the task ahead and find a way forward. There had to be a way forward. There's no such thing as an impossible space. The operator wasn't trying to get in my head or make wild claims. Most of the time, he was just listening, adding the occasional remark when I made an incorrect statement or misinformed decision. And when I came back to the same room I'd already been in for the umpteenth time, tearing my own hair out with frustration, that voice came through loud and clear. "Do you want a suggestion? You're not real. Then what's the harm?" "It doesn't make sense," I snapped back. "I'm talking to a wall. Anything that comes from this, at best, is accidental." "Do you have any better ideas?" I flung the radio across the room, shattering it against the wall on the other side. I heard the plastic clatter and roll down the tilted floor, pooling at a small grate in the center of the room. Some of the smaller pieces trickled, though. I pushed my hands against my ears, trying to clear my thoughts. "Are you done?" The voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was resonating through me, like my bones were picking up a radio signal. I didn't know what to say. Before I could open my mouth, it answered for me. "Then let's get going." I was out of ideas. My tongue was going dry, and my head was swimming from prolonged stress. I could feel this sense of exhaustion seeping into my bones, turning my movements slow and sloppy. I was dragging my feet and not even touching the walls anymore. If I stumbled or walked into something, that was on me. That was fine. The operator mentioned a few suggestions. Take a left turn instead of going forward. Stick to the right. 3 steps back, sharp left. When I could be bothered to filter out that voice from the screaming in the back of my mind, I did as I was told, and slowly but surely, I began to notice things changing. There were different rooms, and the air grew denser. There was a strange smell in the air. The concrete started to feel different, more porous. Maybe this wasn't better, but at least it was new. I started hearing strange noises. There were machines overhead, pressured air rushing just out of sight, flowing water. "Why'd you lead me down here?" I asked. "You tricked me into this." "You were already tricked," the voice responded. "I've been trying to get you out, but it shifts things around. You told me I could go in, and that there were people backing me up. I was trying to put you at ease while I figured this out." "Figured what out? What are we doing here?" "It wants you to go a certain way. Haven't you ever wondered why you're always drawn to look in places you weren't supposed to? It wants you to find it. And now you're very close to doing so, and trust me, you don't want that." "Why not?" I said, shrugging. "Why don't I want that?" "Because I know what happens when you go too far, when you can't turn back. Things like this want to be found in deep, dark places." I smacked the side of my head, as if trying to get better reception in my mind, like that would somehow filter out the nonsense. I came down another fork in the path, left and right. I turned right, as the operator rolled back in my ear. "Go the other way," he said. "You're getting too close. You gotta turn away." I didn't listen. I kept going forward until I could hear something. There were noises ahead. Chatter. My heart raced as I rushed forward. "Please turn around," the operator asked. "Turn around right now." I could hear people talking. I turned a corner, and for the first time in days, I could see a door. I could see a door. There was a faint light coming from underneath, and I could hear people walking around in the other room. I ran up to it and pushed down on the handle. Someone on the other side was calling out, asking if anyone was there. "The key," the operator begged. "I left you a key." I pushed down on the handle and stopped, fumbling around with my right hand. I could feel the key still in my pocket. I'd completely forgotten about it. "There is a way out, but this ain't it. I promise you, this ain't it. Please don't do this. Please don't go that way." "Why not?" I whispered. "They're right there." "It's not real. I made the same mistake. Don't go in." My hand stayed on the handle. Someone urged me to open it. Someone asked me to take a peek. They were laughing with relief, saying how pleased they were to finally have found me, but something didn't feel right. I stepped back. "Open the door on your end," I said out loud. "It's not working." There wasn't as much as a tug on the handle. They came with excuses. Someone had their hands full. Someone said it didn't open from their end. Someone pretended not to hear me. The key in my pocket felt heavier as I traced the outline of the etched sunflower with my thumb. This was real. That was a real thing. What was on the other side of that door wasn't. I stepped back, and as I did, the light behind the door vanished. The voices disappeared, leaving the hallway suddenly deathly quiet. "What do I do?" I whispered. "What do I do?" The operator whispered back. "Go the other way, and don't stop for nothing." I turned around and ran as the door creaked behind me. I heard wet skin slapping against the concrete floor, stumbling forward at an awkward pace. I headed straight, then took a sharp right. The air was growing more dense, more warm. I traced my hand along the right wall, only for it to shift. The concrete grew hot and soft, like sand from the beach. Then the grains turned fine, until it was more like a sludge. It was like dragging your hand across raw chicken. "It wants you to stop," the operator said. "It's trying to distract you. Keep going." The hallway would contract and expand like a breathing entity. At times, the floor would roll, as if trying to swallow me. I could feel it tilt in different angles, making the way forward twist and turn. One moment I'm going forward. Next moment, the hallway tilted upward, and I'm using ridges in the floor to climb a makeshift ladder. Then I'm falling on my back, holding on for dear life as I'm thrown this way and that. All the while, something at the bottom is waiting for me to drop. Something that came out of that door, and who's tired of playing games. I was soaking wet when I came to what felt like a dead end. There was this slimy substance covering the wall, but I could push against it. It felt like trying to pop a soap-drenched balloon. Using scissors from the first aid kit, I managed to cut a big enough hole for my hand to fit, and rip all the way through. As I did, everything rolled again, as something screamed in pain. Not with sound, but with movement, convulsion, and heat. I could feel the compressed air press against my eardrums, making my sense of balance shiver. There was a door at the end of the hallway. It was chained. "This is it," the operator said. Get the key and go." It was coming down the hall, heading straight for me. It was so fast. How could it be so fast? I reached for my key and felt around for a lock. There was one. I slotted the key in, turned, and pulled. There was a click, and the chain rattled to the floor. As I swung the door open and dashed through, I turned around for a moment, just to close it behind me. As I did, I saw something staring back at me from the dark. Something with milk-white skin and atrophied eyes, and the wild-grown maw of an invertebrate predator. The door closed, and I stepped back, catching my breath. There was light here. The operator came through, but the voice was barely reaching me. I could hear scratches, like interference, like I was just out of reach. "Just keep going," he said. "Not far. Got it from here." "What about you?" I asked. "Are you still in there?" "Went the wrong way." I paused for a moment, looking back. The light was faint, but my eyes were still adjusting. I couldn't focus. "Is that you?" I asked. "I mean, really you?" There was a short pause as the world came into view. The operator thought about it for a moment and then sighed. "Is what it is," he said. "Later, Gator." I followed the sound of machinery and wandered straight out onto a platform. Early commuters saw me wandering out of a maintenance tunnel, and I was approached by a janitor. I wasn't making any sense at that point. When law enforcement came to pick me up, I was delirious. It took them hours to identify me, and I was of little help. I'd been wandering down there for almost 3 full days. I was dehydrated. They had found the missing urban explorer and shifted their rescue attempt to me, trying to figure out exactly where I'd gone off the beaten path. No one managed to find the black door that I was describing, or the corridor where it was supposed to have been. Retracing my steps seemed impossible, as nothing was the way I described it. They couldn't explain what I'd experienced. My clothes were covered in a thin layer of hydrochloric acid and potassium chloride, in a mix similar to gastric acid, like I'd been walking through a massive, diluted stomach. There were interviews, questionnaires, and even a short article in a local newspaper. Most wanted to talk about the fear of being lost in the dark and what it does to your mind. It lost its novelty after about a week, and I was back at work like nothing had happened. I still do search and rescue on a volunteer basis sometimes. I'm a bit more careful, sure, but you can't change what you are overnight. And yet, I think something has changed. I'm asking different questions nowadays, and I'm not sure I want an answer. I can't say for sure what I was doing during those 3 days, or what I experienced, but I know what I heard. I know I wasn't alone, and in those rare moments where I think it was all some fake, made-up nonsense from the back of my mind, I look into the top drawer of my nightstand. That's where I keep a small key, with an etched sunflower, that someone left for me in the dark. Wow. That was an amazing story. Kudos to Satterdad. You killed it. That was so good. Like, it seriously takes a brilliant mind to be able to write something this great. When the OP touched the face, I genuinely, that freaked me out. I see a comment here by the OP saying that maybe that whoever's face that was is who dropped the key. Again, definitely go check out more of Satterdad's writing. All their links are going to be down in the description. Anyways, if you like today's video, drop a like and subscribe. I upload every single day, and huge shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you do want to further support the channel, that link's going to be down in the description. It's greatly appreciated, but not at all required. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace. 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 Peace.